What's up? What's up? What's up? This is Faith Helps Podcast, and I'm your host, Diamond Booth. And today we are talking about dealing with toxic families. So this is something that comes up a lot in my work as a therapist. It also comes up a lot in just everyday life and even among like my families. And so this felt particularly timely to have this conversation, especially with September being the month of awareness for suicide. And a lot of the trauma that people encounter starts with toxic families. But more specifically, what I want to talk about today is more so, what do you do when the people who love you the most and the people that you love the most are also one of the biggest sources of triggers for your insecurities, right? So I did this training on how to deal with toxic families, and one of the audience members kind of was sharing how her family is supportive in a lot of ways. However, in certain ways, her family is less supportive and sometimes say things that are like really hurtful, which I can relate to. I'm sure all of us can relate to. We all have that one cousin that gets under your skin and picks on the one thing that no one knows that is actually a huge insecurity for you. And so it made me think about kind of using myself as an example. This is more so an issue of faith and psychology at its finest than a lot of people may realize. So on one aspect, you're dealing with family. And with this being a faith-based podcast, we're going to talk about faith. We're going to talk about the intersectionality between our mental health and our emotional health and our physical health, as well as our spiritual health. So with that being said, the faith side, we really talk about how do you deal with what you're hearing. And that was something that we dove a lot into in previous weeks, about what you're hearing, what people are saying to you, how to filter what you're being told and what you're allowing people to speak into your life. And that goes for family as well. So on the faith side, when we're dealing with toxic families, we can notice us having to battle with doubt and insecurity and self-worth and our value and giving up and even hopelessness, all a recipe for disaster, and all a lot of things that tend to coexist or correlate with suicidality. And on the other hand, which is also related, is the psychology piece. But the piece that I want to focus on more intricately is the mindset shift and your motivation, because a lot of people struggle with motivation, and one thing that can make it 10 times worse is when you have the people that you love and love you but don't always say the right things in your ear about what you can and can't do, or shutting down your ideas and saying it's not a great idea, or that's a stupid idea, or you sound too this to do that, or you sound too that to be this. So I'll use myself as an example. As I've said on this podcast before, I believe in transparency because I do believe that helps us heal. And also something that I've constantly found is that there's so much healing that happens in sharing our testimonies, but also sharing our experiences. Not only allowing each other to know you're not alone, and I'm not speaking of trauma bonding, that will be for another episode, but more so the mutual validation and the mutual reassurance. So, to give context, a couple of days before this training, which was ironic the timing that question came up after this event, something that I've always been really, really insecure about is my voice. I grew up hating my voice because I was always teased and told, oh, you sound like a baby, you have such a baby voice, you have such a baby face, oh, you're so young, you're so little, all those things. Primarily because I hung out with older people. Majority of my friends, even to this day, are older than me. And so that was something I had to constantly hear, is comments and just like jokes about my age, or jokes about my appearance and looking so much younger than I am. Now I've embraced it. I'm like, yes, baby, I do. But the voice thing, that one I'm still learning to embrace and learning to heal in that area, right? So a couple of days ago, as I was saying, I was on the phone with my father, and for some reason, I can't remember every detail leading up to the comment. He was saying something about he was listening to my voicemail, and he made a comment about, you sound like such a baby. Initially I was like, oh yeah, okay. Like, it didn't faze me, but he kept harping on it, and I'm like, I was looking at my phone like, okay, move on. You're such a baby. You sound so little. You sound like a 10-year-old. You sound like a kid. And I realized in retrospect that with every statement he made and every joke, and even he could have even meant it in an endearing way, it felt more and more frustrating. Probably because one of the biggest things I do is talk in my fields, and I already have to deal with my older clients questioning my competence because of my age, or because I look like a kid, or I look so young, or I sound so young. And then I gotta check them like, don't let this baby face fool you. I do know what I know. And so yeah, I wish I had said that better, but we're gonna keep it moving anyway. I had to learn to like start filtering even what my loved ones say, even if they mean it in an endearing way, even if they mean it in a so-called joking way. I had to learn to start filtering, like, okay, is this helpful information? Is this unhelpful information? Is this something that's going to build me, or is this something that's pulling me down? And that can be a really hard thing to assess. And sometimes it takes you a couple minutes to kind of sit back and assess for yourself, like, okay, what's coming up for me when I hear this comment? What am I feeling when this person says this? So that's exactly what I did in retrospect. After the fact, once we got off the phone, I'm like, man, I'm so irritated. I'm so tired of people saying stuff about my voice. I'm so tired of people talking about, oh, I sound like this and I sound like that. Stop. I was mad, and it almost threw me off for the whole rest of the day. And thankfully I was able to catch myself like, oh, this is the spiritual side. For one, that's the enemy attacking my voice. As I said, one of the biggest things I do with my purpose and my calling is use my voice. Podcasting, and when I go to give a speech or a training, when I am talking with my clients, I use my voice so much. And yet, that is the exact thing that was getting triggered. And I noticed as I kind of was like examining my thoughts after having that conversation or hearing those statements from him, I started thinking, you know what, this one will talk. And I noticed myself starting to feel insecure about the podcast. I noticed myself starting to feel insecure about when I am invited places to give a training or to give a talk about particular mental health topics. I start feeling like these people aren't going to really want to hear me, or trying to change and alter my voice to sound older, whatever that sounds like. I don't know. But those are some of the foolish things that I started thinking and started doing. Like, oh, I gotta dress this way so I'm perceived as this way. No, I want to dress how I want to dress. I want to talk however I want to talk. Sometimes I change my voice depending on who I'm with and how comfortable I am. And sometimes I change my voice depending on how professional I need to be. And I eat code switching. But what bothered me is that, one, it was coming from someone who I know loves me and whom I love, but it still was hurting, and it was so frustrating. I knew he wouldn't get it because he isn't thinking of it in the way that I'm thinking of it. And a lot of times we're assuming that the other person is in our head and knows what we're thinking. They don't. And even if they do, I'm sorry, boo-boo, but the responsibility falls on you to be the one to decide how you want to handle that information and what you want to do about it, and if you're going to allow it to be a seed that is planted and grows in your mind, which is the second part. So the spiritual part was all the doubts that started coming up for me, the insecurities that almost led me into this rabbit hole mind frame of thinking of, you know what, maybe I shouldn't do this, or I shouldn't do that, or I need to try to do this and try to do that. And the moment you start being someone that you're not, or questioning who you are, is the moment you step out of alignment with who God has called you to be. He called you to be exactly who you are, the way you are, because he needed someone with your charisma, your voice, your personality, your style, your identity to do the calling that he placed in your hands. No one else can do it. He needed and wanted you to do it. Right? So that's the spiritual side, because at the end of the day, we are not here for vacation. We are here in an all-out war. Okay? See past episodes if you don't know what I'm talking about, or just read the whole Bible. On the other hand, it was the mindset which kind of overlaps with the spiritual part. Is this mindset, not just all the insecurities, but also this shift in my mood and this shift in my motivation. And I started dragging my feet and kind of almost, as I said, threw away my whole day thinking, you know what, just forget it, or just I don't feel like doing that. I don't feel like walking the dogs right now. I don't feel like typing up that paper or that whatever right now, because it threw me off. And so one of the most important things that I would tell anyone who's dealing with receiving unhealthy messages or criticism and feedback from family members in particular, or loved ones, I think it can expand across the spectrum, it could be friends as well, is take a moment to assess how the information that you're receiving feels to you. And secondly, is it true? And when I say is it true, I don't need you validating whether or not it's true. I want you to go to what God said about you. Did God call you that? Did God say that about you? As far as I'm concerned, which is exactly what I did, God said that I was made in his image. God said that I'm unique. God said that I am a work of art. So anything that I receive that is not in alignment with that is a lie. It's inconsistent. And if I believe it, I risk my purpose. I risk my calling. I risk my peace. And I don't know about y'all, but the world is too crazy to be just giving up your peace to any and everybody who has something to say. So one of the things that I told this young lady that joined us for this talk about like toxic families is it's really important sometimes to know when to close the window on what you're allowing even loved ones to deliver to you, right? So think about, I like to explain boundaries as like a gate. You're on the inside of the gate, right? And everybody else, family included, is on the outside, okay? You are in control of opening the gate and letting certain people in and closing the gate. You are also responsible and in control of, if someone tries to push through the gate, to reassert and close that gate and set boundaries and or consequences if necessary, if your boundaries are not being respected. And that is the same with loved ones, family members, as well as what they're, not just what they do, but what they're saying. So if that family member and you've expressed, hey, I don't like when you say that comment, or I don't like when you make that joke, and they continue to push that gate open and make that joke or say that comment, you shut that gate. What does that look like? That looks like hanging up the phone. And of course, you know, respectful, because in certain cultural families that might be a whole nother problem. So be respectful. and saying, I'm going to get off the phone because I said if you do A, then I was going to do B, because when you do A, it makes me feel ABCD, right? So whatever, however you want to shape it, but setting that boundary and then backing it up with your walk. So don't just talk it and don't just say it, but actually follow through with it. Follow through with what you're saying. You will notice such a huge change in how people treat you. You may even notice some people cutting you off or being mad and not wanting anything to deal with you, and that's okay. And lastly, I really, really encourage you to make sure you have your positive affirmations, your self-affirmations down pat. Because of course, regardless of what boundaries you set, you can't always filter and stop every single person in your life from saying any negative thing. There are going to be times when your guard is caught down. So make sure that you are already preparing for that by feeding yourself healthy, positive affirmations now. All right, that's all I got for you guys. If nothing else, remember, faith helps, and love on yourself a little bit this weekend. All right, bye.